booties for black girl nerds.
I apologize for the noise. I'm on Wilshire and La Cienega right now at Starbucks, so I'm so sorry for the noise.
Okay.
No, I don't hear
You would
anything.
never know.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. But I thank you for your time. And the dynamic between Jerry and Jenny has been particularly interesting because we hear stories about children who have to step beyond the shadow. But what if the child is just as much as an alpha as the parent? And what does that relation look like? And both of you are portraying that beautifully. Hadley, beginning with you, how would you describe Jenny at this stage? When we first met Jenny, she's very young and she's working more for the approval of her father, but now she's really stepping into her own corporate adulthood and wants to make firm decisions. So what is that, Jenny, in this whole picture?
Well, I think I think Jeannie, she shows up with like a lot of great ideas, and you can see them implemented in season 1 surrounding the forum. And I think that's sort of when she's trying to get her dad's attention to prove that she can do this thing in season 1. And like her dad was putting her in meetings with him since she was 12 years old or something like that. And so this has been kind of her life's work, like ever since she hit puberty. This is what she's been doing. And so even in her early 20s, she's already had so much experience. And I think in season 2, the difference is now we're sort of seeing her find her footing and build confidence and find independence in her work as well. But so much of what she does is mirroring her father. So it's about finding sort of what is similar to Jerry and then how Jeannie differentiates as well, which is kind of fun.
John, for what I enjoyed about, there's many things I enjoy about your portrayal, but what I was looking at this season is Jerry is also doing a lot of personality management. There's a lot of focus on his ideals and thinking big, but even within that, he's managing people and identifying the strengths in them. Is this a Jerry who is now accepting the greatness in front of him and kind of can pull back a little, or does he need to keep his finger on the button with the intensity that he's had the entire time?
In our version of events for the second season, he makes the mistake of thinking that he can lean back and let other people take over stuff regarding the team, and he can focus on his personal life a little bit. That bites him in the butt right away. He realizes, like, no, actually, I'm the leader of this, and I have to keep my eye on the prize the whole time. I think that was like his superpower, actually, was seeing people, seeing who they really were and what they were capable of. He did that with a bunch of women in his organization. He did it with players, and he often asked people to do, he thrust greatness upon people a lot of times. People sometimes didn't even realize that they were capable of something, but Jerry, like a great poker player, which he was, could read people at a table and tell, like, I know when that person is bluffing, and I know when that person has the cards, and I know, So I thought that was a really interesting thing about him, for all of his, partying ways and his kind of lifestyle things that people focused on. He was actually a really astute judge of character.
The Bus family is well documented as being true visionaries in the landscape of sports. So Hadley, over to you. What do you think is the downside of being a visionary and creating opportunities for people? Because it's a very lonely path that few people truly walk.
Wow, what an interesting question. I think like father, like daughter. I think she followed in her father's footsteps in that way. And, they did bring the whole Showtime element to basketball, making it interesting, making it fun. I think, like, if anything, there's got to be a lot of sacrifices that you have to make in terms of your personal life, maybe. And, in this fictionalized account, well, based on truth, we kind of see that with Jeannie and how how maybe in her personal life things are coming up short because she is devoting so much of her time to this thing that she loves. And also, you know, you also kind of see her anxiety at an all-time high, and how this kind of work affects your anxiety and your health, and that's touched on too. Yeah, those are some of the things.
I mean, I think when you're dealing with characters that are like legends, legendary people who are dealing with matters of, you know, big momentous decisions and stuff, the tendency is to think like, oh, I don't have to pay attention to the little human stuff in my life. I'm a legend, you know, like I have to make this team win, or whatever all these big things are. And I think smart people, whether they're famous politicians or athletes or rock stars or whatever, smart people remember, wait, no, I have responsibilities as a human being to the other people in my personal life, and that has to have some priority, you know. When things go screwy, it's usually when people think they're above it somehow, that they don't have to deal with the mundane things of life, but we all do.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you. They are wrapping me. Thank you for another phenomenal season. I'm a diehard Laker fan, true and true. Grew up in the shadow of the Forum. So this is appointment TV for me anytime winning time comes on. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. My apologies for the noise. I'm on La Cienega and Wilshire right now, but you know, I really wanted to talk to you because I'm very passionate about this show, and as an LA Laker fan who grew up in the shadow of the Forum, so it's a very important show to me. Beginning with you, Max, I'm always intrigued by the stories of our legends when they are falling short or not reaching the potential that they become storied about. How do you identify exactly which aspects of that storytelling that you want the audience to see? And how do you think it changes the perception of people and their heroes?
I mean, one of the great things about this story, as another, like you, Angelino native who grew up loving the Lakers and loving these characters, is that we know them as fans from the outside looking in. We know what they have become and what they have achieved, but we don't necessarily know what it took to get there and how hard it is at every level to not only win once, but as this season is about, to take that single flash in the pan victory and then fight to become great on a repeated level, at a dynastic level. And we always have had great fun with the fact that we know what Magic Johnson is to the public now, but who was he as that kid who had just come into the league? We know Pat Riley with his Armani suits, but one of the fun things for us is meeting Pat Riley and see as the sort of guy who doesn't even know he's going to have a second act in his career and thinks he's just a washed up player, and then goes through this, you know, crucible to become the man that we know today. And it's a lot like the origin story of any kind of great hero. He literally dons his, you know, cape and cowl with that Armani suit and the slick back hair. And then there's the human stuff beneath that, what it took for this guy to find inside himself that kind of leadership that we know Pat Riley has had. And at every level, for every character, it's just a journey of transformation from the human beings that they started as into the complex human beings, but the legacy and the legends that we as fans know them to be.
Just maximum respect to Adrian Brody for his portrayal of Pat Riley. I mean, it's such an iconic look, particularly if you're any type of Laker fan. You have the image of Pat in the suits and the slick back hair. And for most people, not the coming up version that we see, but the one that we know. Rodney, over to you. Speaking of that in Riley's second act, what do you think is, not as specifically that's mentioned in the show, but there are coaches who have gone on to success as their second act. If you could look to an idea or what you believe is the quality that they have, I think of him, I think of Phil Jackson and all the coaches who had moderate success as players, but have gone on to be extraordinary coaches. What do you think the biggest difference is between those players, coaches, them being players?
I think the opportunity, you sort of hit it on the head when you talked about guys who weren't necessarily great players.
Mhm.
They got an opportunity to observe and be around the psychology of great players. They had the opportunity to sit on the bench and learn and watch. So they understand what it means to be the guy that's on the bench, but they also understand the psychology and ego of the guy that's great as well. And you sort of need that. When you look at the old NBA, it was usually guys oftentimes that didn't play the game that were the coaches and GMs and owners and all of that. And they understood it from the idea of strategy and business, but not necessarily from the player themselves. And you look at it now, I would say the NBA we're operating in right now, 70% of the guys were former players. And I think that was born during this era right now. And part of even the storyline that we deal with right now was that bridge that Pat Riley had to make, where the guys looked at him as one of the guys, to ultimately respecting him as a head coach and that journey he had to take. And I think that sort of set a template for what the modern NBA coach becomes.
Back over to you, Max. As viewers will know, and history tells itself, the Celtics were a juggernaut during this period, and the Lakers are trying to recreate the splash in the pan, as you mentioned. What do you think that the Celtics, just from your research and deep diving, what do you think they had figured out during that era that the Lakers took a little bit of time to ultimately work to the same type of juggernaut status?
Well, they had history and they had an institution on their side. Like Red Auerbach, obviously he had Bill Russell, and they built an institution of winning over the course of 2 decades in the 50s and the 60s. So by the time that the 80s came around, they were such a dynasty that it was almost inconceivable that another team could ever rack up enough championships to be in the same conversation. At this point, the Lakers had won a couple championships in Minnesota, and then a couple of them one in LA, and that's it. And they'd never beaten the Celtics. We look at it now, and the Lakers and the Celtics are about on par, if not on par. 17 and 18, is it? That happens. That was not what it was at the time. It was the Lakers are the pretenders. They want some piece of what the Celtics had, and I think what Red and Bill Russell and the Celtics had established was a team mentality where winning as a team was more important than any star, was more important than anything. And they did it in a particular way that was very kind of East Coast and had its own sort of old school basketball dynamic. And a lot of people looked at the Showtime Lakers and Magic and saw something that was a lot more fun and freewheeling, but didn't think that that could ever be as consistent or as as successful in the long term as what the Celtics had. And it only became that because of what happens in the season, where they had to fight every obstacle, get tougher, and the first thing they had to battle was themselves, both internally to find the will to do it again, and amongst each other in a game, as Rodney alluded to, that has stars. It's still a team game, and no star can do it alone. So this is really that season where they face their biggest obstacles on that path to trying to face their greatest rival.
Absolutely. That is my time. Thank you for another phenomenal season. The show, it just when you think you've hit it, it gets even better each season. Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize in advance for the noise. I'm literally on La Cienega in Wilshire because I had to jump out, but I didn't want to miss these interviews because this is a very important series to me. I'm a huge born and raised Laker fan, grew up in the shadow of the Forum. So this is appointment TV for me every single season.
Awesome.
So Salli, I will begin with you. When we see stories, when we have an idea as fans of anyone, athletes in particular, we have the heroic image of them. Now we get to dive deep in what the makings of a hero really, really looks like. How do you think this changes the perception, the fans' perception of their heroes, to be able to see these weak moments or moments where they may fall short?
Well, I mean, we think about now, we get to see everything that's happening with our basketball players, the good and bad. And I don't think it takes anything away from these guys. I think it just kind of lifts the veil of secrecy. They came up in a time when there wasn't social media. You couldn't see every little misstep. But I think that the writers do an amazing job at really honoring these players and not disparaging them. And, it's all about getting it right as close as we can. We're not trying to dramatize anything bad. We're just trying to tell the truth as closely as we can.
Along with that, getting it right, Kevin, over to you. Some of the conversations that I've had with people, not only just the beauty of identifying these moments in the lineage of the Lakers, but even in particular, the casting. Like I look at Adrian Brody this season and he's phenomenal. I mean, the whole cast is phenomenal, but Adrian Brody really stuck out to me. What do you guys give each other an attaboy, or when you see it all come together like that, what satisfaction does that bring to you as a producer?
Satisfaction and a luck. When Adam McKay and I were casting the pilot with Francine Maisler, at some point after interviewing Magic's, we were like, oh wow, if we don't find the right kid for Magic, we can't make the show. We weren't even on to the Kareem search at that point. And the fact that we got Quincy and Solomon for those two parts was incredible. And the idea that John, who obviously has a long history with Adam, agreed to play Jerry Buss, and Adrian, I think there was a very crafty assistant to his agent who sent me a picture of Pat Reilly and a picture of Adrian all dressed up in his Armani suit. And that's all it took. But no, we agree. We have a kind of a murderer's row of cast, both young and established. And Jason Clark kind of crushes it. There's so many, and Hadley as Jeannie. There's just a lot of great depth across the board. To be honest, I wish we had more time to kind of service some of the other characters in the show. But we're under the limitations of our schedule.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm trying to imagine the task of even identifying what a season can be, because there's so much layers to every aspect, no matter which point of view you take. So Salli, over to you. What does the planning of a season look like? Is it as a dartboard with a thread here and a thread here and a thread here? How intense are those meetings to even identify what you even want to try to cover before the filming even begins?
Well, I mean, I think that, I really have to hand that over to the writers, and, but there were discussions about, where we needed to end the season. And I think that, as a collective, we realized that people want to see, they want to see that rivalry. They want to see the Celtics and the Lakers. And how do we not give you that? And how do we jump these seasons to get to the Garden and everyone rushing the floor and that excitement? So, it definitely became a puzzle of how do we jump around and people understand what's happening to get to Buss and Red and what they're going through, and Magic and Bird and what they're going through, and then Westhead and Reilly and what they're going through, Magic and Cookie. So I think we just really wanted to get to the meat of it, and we found a way to jump around and for it to make sense.
And lastly, over to you, Kevin. So this season, we watch the Lakers as they are trying to figure out how to create this flash in the pan that they had with their previous championship. You have all these people who have a common goal of winning, but they just can't quite get it to gel yet. Is it as simple as saying it's an ego thing? Where do you think it was, in your personal opinion, was the disconnect during this era through the course of research and just being connected with this project?
It's hard to say, right? It's some of it's luck, some of it's destiny, some of it's chemistry. We kind of touch on some of those themes in the show over the course of the season. And you'd think that Magic and the team that he had going into it was designed to kind of be the best out there, but they were bested, just like in real life. When you watch sports in real life, you never can expect and never really know what the true outcome can be. And I think that's what was fun about using that first Lakers Celtics matchup as the season finale. Hopefully that in and of itself is unexpected, because usually you get to the end of a second season of a show about the Lakers and it would be victory. But in this case, it was this big dramatic defeat. And I think the scene that really sticks with me that Salli shot at the end with Magic in the shower, and you hear kind of Led Zeppelin playing over after the riot on the court's happening. It's just that you're bringing it back to the personal. So that guy that started our season as the guy who had everything and was sitting on top of the world is alone in the shower after a crushing defeat, thinking about what's he going to do next, you know? And that's part of what's great about the show. In addition to the spectacle that Salli creates, it's also finding those intimate character moments, which I think she did so well with Quincy there at the end.
It's brilliant. The selfish Laker fan in me is like, forget all this part. Just get to the back, to the back, to the back, to the back, to the Robert Horry era. But this is making it.
We're trying to get there. We're trying to get there.
I know, and I want to get all the way to like now. Thank you guys for another brilliant season, brilliant work. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, darling.
Take care. Please excuse the noise. I'm out on La Cienega and Wilshire right now.
Oh, wow.
I didn't want to miss these interviews, despite you guys being the Celtic people on the show. I'm a diehard Laker fan, but we have love.
So you root for the villains. So when you watch Star Wars, you're like, go Darth, right?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. I'm from Inglewood. I don't even cheer for Paul Pierce. No, absolutely no green. Green for money only. No Celtics love. No.
I see.
But thank you guys. I appreciate your time very much. This is another phenomenal season. And what it makes me happiest is to see the Celtics as part of this story, because there is no Showtime and that growth in the Laker organization without this chapter. So Michael, beginning with you with Red, you have two teams. The Lakers are trying to create this splash in the pan that they've had to win, but the Celtics are a juggernaut and unstoppable. If you personally, in your personal opinion, could point to something that they had figured out that the Lakers of that time didn't have figured out, what do you think that is besides ego and how that was making the team crumble?
Well, ego as it pertains to the converse, which is team, which is chemistry, which is, look, every team in the NBA and in most sports now, there's real parity in the leagues. And the thing that separates them are two things: health down the stretch, especially, because these guys, any given Sunday, they can all beat each other, right? It's health down the stretch and teamwork, and also a great battle plan by great coaches, right? That helps tremendously too. But then you have to execute. You have to have poise, and you have to have character, right? So these guys, Red is an old school guy, and he came from all about team, and he didn't think about flash or entertainment or any of that. And one thing that Bus realized is like, hey, I came at this from a marketing standpoint. How can I make this lucrative and fun and enjoyable for an audience? But if I'm going to have staying power, I got to get this formula down. And the way you do that is to make bring together like-minded guys who want the same thing, guys who are dedicated and want to win championships and are more interested in being parts of a championship team than they are about being the star of a lesser team. And when, that Lakers team, oh God, I have to say positive things about them. God, that it's undeniable that Lakers team as a unit with Worthless and with all those guys. And I was in Boston University from 81 to 85, and people think that I have this raspy voice from smoking or something. It's not that. It was from screaming at the Lakers and the Yankees. As a unit, they were incredible as a team. And the chemistry between them. the way they moved the ball around, the way they communicated like a great improvisational jazz band works together. They don't even have to look at each other. They just know. It's a feel, it's a vibe more than anything. You know, these guys were electric together. There's no doubt about that. But
Sean, over to you. Some of the brilliance of your performance that I saw this season is we think we know Larry Bird, but unless you are a diehard Larry Bird fan or from that region of the country where he's from, you don't have a lot of in-depth of who the man is behind the basketball player. So in the shaping of your embodying of him, what do you think affected your performance the most? Who he was as a young man coming into his athletic caliber, or did you look more into the established Larry Bird to kind of shape what you wanted to convey?
That's a great question. I actually brought a lot of backstory with me into season 1 because I had started writing my own miniseries about Bird in 2014 that helped me garner all that backstory, because I was writing from his senior year of high school to senior year of college, and then that just like leapt perfectly into his rookie season. So being able to play that this season, it was just like, as Michael was saying earlier in another interview, it's just kismet. Like everything kind of came together, and then peeling back those layers and showing people why he is who he was during the Celtics years. You know, he just seems like this hard-nosed, competitive person, and no one really has asked why he was that way, other than like, oh, he just wanted to win. And it's like, yes, he wanted to win at all costs, but why? And we get to showcase that in season 2.
You feel like he manifested it during the course of that study? Did you ever think in your mind, I want to play him?
Yeah, I mean, I read the book When March Went Mad by Seth Davis. There's a story there with like his whole backstory of his dad tragically committing suicide and him never wanting to go back to college and then being recruited to Indiana State. All these things made for a story. And I was like, okay, I kind of look like him. Like, people have told me that I look like him. I wore 33 in high school because of him. Like, all these things happened where I was like, okay, I'm going to write for a character that I'm going to play. And that eventually happened. It wasn't the way that I thought it was going to happen, where my thing was sold and I made that. But I mean, this is like the probably better thing anyways, because I get to be a part of a cast of, you know, Michael and all these seasoned vets, and then get to play with Quincy and Solomon and all these other players on the Lakers squad that I just get to trash talk the whole time. So
Michael, lastly, over to you. When you're able to see your performance back, do you look at any aspect and think, I need my Boston people to see me do this part? Is there a section we're waiting for that's going to come up during the season where you've called it ready, like, get ready because I'm going to kill it?
I really loved a couple of the scenes that I got to do this past season, particularly in the first episode. There's a great scene where I basically face Jerry Buss and the entire table of the Lakers staff, and I give him what for, and I tell him a little bit about my own personal philosophy. And, you know, I don't want to blow it for people, but right away, right out of the gate. And then later on in this the season, there's a really wonderful scene between John and I. Also, I love the scene between Sean and I when I come to his house and sort of try to coerce him, or, you know, lure him into the Celtics, however you want to put it. And that was a great day, terrific day. So there's some really great stuff that'll lend insight to who these guys are and what happened. And yeah, I know that they do service to these two men, and that and all of them, in fact. So yeah, I hope that my Boston brethren dig it.
They absolutely will. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Phenomenal season. Can't wait to see the commentary. Thank you again.
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
performance. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. I appreciate it. As someone who grew up in the shadow of the Forum, Winning Time is appointment TV for me, and I'm glad you guys are back for another season. I'm sorry about the noise. I'm on La Cienega and Wilshire right now. Solomon, beginning with you, every time there is a new season, I love to look at what other people are saying about your portrayal of Kareem, because it's been visionary and layered, and it's been very, very exciting to see you embody him on the screen. When you are embodying a character like Kareem, who was so unique and interesting in his perspectives and his style of play, what are the most fascinating elements of the man to you to help you embody that?
Such a great question. I mean, I think I've said before, like I feel like he epitomizes Black America in so many ways, right? Harlem, Los Angeles, Milwaukee. I mean, you know, his spiritual journey. I mean, there are, I think, I think the thing that what's been fun for me is I feel like I'm a fan of history, but getting into this role, getting this job, it's been this really fun return to some of the things that I was fascinated by as a kid, like learning about the Harlem Renaissance, learning about the Great Migration, learning about, you know, Black spirituality, like getting to like dive into those things again has been incredibly rewarding, you know, as opposed to doing it when I was like a teenager, but now as like a 40-plus-year-old man. That is because it's the people that influenced him, right? It's the figures, his parents, jazz musicians, etc. That's the thing that has just been like incredibly rewarding.
And shout out to the Black Don't Crack, because I didn't know you were over 40. You look amazing. I can't believe you're playing a character that's so young. Had no idea you're over 40. Keep the moisturizing going. We love that.
Incredible, right?
And Jason,
Solomon
over
and I
to
have
you.
the same age. It breaks my heart. Can you
I
believe-
am too. I am too, and I look every bit of over 40. So I need to get on your program for sure. Jason, over to you for Paul Westhead. Like Solomon, brilliant performance, brilliant embodying of some really iconic people in history, and that in itself lends a different type of, not pressure, but just accountability by people who are going to watch and enjoy it. What are the most intriguing aspects of Paul as you've learned him more and more as with each season?
Sure. Well, I know we're short on time, but I just want to speak to Solomon real quick, which is, as you can see from his answer to your question, he's like a student of all of these things so that he understands them. I found the same thing, which was like what was most inspiring to me about his approach to acting, which is that Solomon came in with, I assume, the biggest role you've ever had to do. Yeah. And he asked questions and he watched his other actors, and he was not shy about expressing that he wanted to learn how to do this like better and better and better. And you watch his performance go from somebody who's really good at acting to a student of acting who became like great at acting. And doing scenes with Solomon was as formidable as acting with guys who have been doing this for 20, 30 years. It was like a brilliant thing to watch. So I just wanted to tell you that. I was very lucky, in my opinion, in that Paul Westhead, while being a real guy who I respect and all that, is lesser known in the pantheon of, you know, there's not a lot of like Westhead heads out there. And so there was a little bit of freedom and latitude to treat him a little bit more as an archetype, which I hoped he would appreciate, being a Shakespearean scholar. But I saw him as us if we achieved something we never thought we were going to get the chance to achieve and then didn't quite know how to handle it. That was my approach to Paul Westhead.
Let us too give you your flowers too with your brilliant performance. All of you have really elevated this material to for Laker fans, we're just like, you know,
it's fun,
amazing.
Right? It's fun to watch. Yeah.
And just because you said that, I'm going to have to go get a Westhead t-shirt and right? I'm wearing it. Just because you said I'm going to get it made and I'm going to wear it.
All right. Now we're talking.
Mm-hmm. Solomon, back over to you. We see all of these people who are committed to the win on the Lakers side of the organization, and they just haven't quite figured out how to create that splash in the pan that we saw in the last season. What do you think that the Celtics, just personally, what do you think the Celtics of that era had it figured out that the Lakers didn't? Is it as simple as something like ego? What do you think they had figured out.
I feel like there's something really magical about history, right? And when you look at their history of dominance, there's there's this sense of belonging, like we belong in the champion seat, right? So I think you know it was just looking at their incredible reign. I think the Lakers are an organization that they're finding their way, right? They've always played like second fiddle essentially, and so I feel like the Celtics, there's like a comfortability of like we're supposed to win, you know.
Well, I hope my current Lakers are watching this season too, because we having some struggles over there at Staples Center.
Come on.
But we're going to get there. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Another brilliant season. I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for the kind words.
Thank you.
Better shake your booties for black girl nerves. Better shake your booties for black girl nerves.